right. Welcome to the Here podcast. I'm your host, Michael Allen, and I'm so thrilled to have Jill Schulman with us. Say hello, Jill.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Curtis introduced us. Curtis Morley, who most of our audience is familiar with. We've had him on the podcast, and he's been to a few of our retreats as well and has spoken and facilitated there. And he just connected with you recently and immediately strongly recommended you to us, and I'm sure many others. And so I just want to give our audience a little bit of a background of who you are,
Okay,
Jill, and then
sure.
we want to hear more from you, of course. So Jill Schulman is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, a keynote speaker, and expert in the science of bravery. I mean, just right there, we could have a whole huge conversation about that, but I'll keep going. With a master's in applied positive psychology, the science of happiness and well-being. And I've heard so much about that, by the way. I was so curious about that. She combines evidence-based research with real-world experience to help individuals and teams embrace courage, push limits, and achieve greater performance and well-being. And you're writing a book, The Science of Bravery, which provides practical tools and for developing a courageous mindset, taking bold actions, and building brave relationships.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. I'm so curious about so many things, but the topic that keeps coming up here is bravery, right? And so I'd love to just start with that. What got you onto that topic? And I'm sure it's connected to some of your life experience and the things that were mentioned here.
Yeah. I mean, really my big why in diving into bravery is I think that a lot of people believe that the path to happiness and well-being is a life of ease. Like I want everything to be easy.
Yeah.
I want comfort. I don't want any adversity in life. And if I can achieve that, then I'm going to be happy and live my best life. And what the science tells us is that is absolutely not true. You know, Marcus Aurelius said, comfort is the worst addiction. And I feel like we need to kind of right the ship and make sure people know that if you want the most successful, but more importantly, your happiest life with the highest level of well-being and life satisfaction, you need to choose the difficult path, right? And that requires bravery because, if you've got, if you're at a fork in a road and you can go the easy route, which is like, this is going to be easy, this is going to be comfortable, or you choose that more challenging route, that taking a left going down the challenging road will lead to higher levels of happiness and well-being. And I feel like, especially in today's age, as we all talked about, we have kids and convenience era, that I just want to get the message out there that anyone can be brave. And I just want them to go left and choose the difficult path because I know it'll lead them to more happiness and well-being.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. Is there a connection here with your service in the Marine Corps and this subject that you have?
Yeah, maybe. Yes. I mean, I've always been one that I just love challenges because people ask me like, well, why did you choose the Marine Corps?
Yeah.
Because it's the few, the proud, and it's the hardest one. And I've been on podcasts with Navy SEALs and then they challenge me on that and go, come on, the Navy SEALs. I'm like, okay, yes, the Navy SEALs, they are much tougher than we are. But in terms of a service, like I really wanted that Marine Corps experience because the few, the proud. So I love challenges. I've always loved challenges. But what I've found for even myself is that when I've gone down a challenging path, it's not easy. There's a lot of ups and downs, but when I can persevere and I can achieve that goal, it's the journey of who you become, as you go through those challenges that increases your self-confidence and, your self-efficacy, it's that journey. So, I mean, even I would love to say that I showed up in San Diego to become a United States Marine and it was just an easy road, but it wasn't. I thought I was all that.
Ready.
I mean, because I had gotten this full scholarship on the Marine Corps, and it's hard to get because you have to be like an athlete and a leader and great academically. And so I reported in down there. And this was before college. So this is ROTC. So you can get a full scholarship on either the Navy or the Marine Corps. So I went into NROTC. And I had a full ride, which got me out of Minnesota and brought me to Southern California. And when I showed up in San Diego for kind of a 1-week orientation, which is like a mini boot camp, I showed up in pink silk shorts with little pink pumps, trying to like look professional, right? Sure. And just imagine that scene. And then anything you think of when you think of like Marine Corps, like boot camp, and that basically told you the beginning of my journey. I was not prepared. Someone even came up to me and said, "You will never make it as a Marine." And I thought I was in great shape. But hills of Southern California, like I was not prepared, and it was not a pretty journey. But the fact that it wasn't easy is what made it so special.
Wow. Okay. This is taking me to, I'm thinking about just the way that you grew up and upbringing, because there was a reason you chose to do a hard thing and go into the Marine Corps. Was there something about your family culture or your upbringing that like fostered this sort of, let's do hard things?
You know what? I think my motivation did come from the family, but in a different way.
Okay.
And I'm just speaking from my experience growing up in Minnesota, but my family, both of my parents had jobs. They worked hard, but the jobs were more of, I have a job. I'm going to do what's required to earn a paycheck.
Right.
But their job really wasn't soulful. It wasn't meaningful. And I just wanted more. I wanted a career where there was meaning or pride. Like I wanted to feel that bigger why. I did have a grandfather that was a United States Marine. So I kind of always had that in the back of my head. But my grandfather, since he fought in World War II and saw combat, like he never talked about it. Maybe there's a little seed from my grandfather. But I just wanted to get out of Minnesota and do something adventuresome and do something that really mattered.
Cool. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So take us on the journey then. You ended up at studying the psychology of, what was it?
Positive psychology.
Positive psychology.
Yeah, which is
connected to
science.
Wellness, happiness. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about what got you there and just maybe some of the big takeaways from your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once I had left the Marine Corps and gone to corporate America, I did really well. I moved up and I really ended up starting my own business on leadership development. So after having a leadership development company for, I guess it was about 9 years, I just realized that, culture is a key to driving results. We all know that, right? Yeah. Sometimes if a company's not successful, they might have the right product, they might have the right strategy, but if you don't have the right culture. So a lot of the things that I taught my clients is developing the right culture, being a great leader. And I kept running into research that was related to positive psychology. My job as a consultant is I always have to bring evidence-based leadership development strategies. And so I started reading about positive psychology and the intersection with organizational psychology. And the first thing my little entree into it is I watched a TED Talk by Sean Aker, and he wrote a book called The Happiness Advantage, and basically saying, like, people think that if you achieve a result or if you achieve a goal, then you become happy. And he says, that's wrong. It's actually, you need to find happiness. And once I heard that TED Talk, and then I read his book, and then he cited a bunch of research, and then I went down the rabbit hole, and I'm like, there's a whole science to happiness and well-being, and it impacts our success at work. And so I decided I want to pursue that. So what I learned in positive psychology is first of all, happiness is something that is a choice. There's things we can do to become happy. And I've always said, ever since I was very young, is life is what you make it. So it spoke to my soul.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what an empowering message. There's things we can do, actions we can take to create happiness and well-being in our lives. Life doesn't happen to us. And so there's 5 things based on Marty Seligman, the founder of positive psychology at UPenn, and I studied under him at UPenn. There's 5 things that you can do that all relate to your happiness and well-being. One is positive emotion. And that's where people think positive psychology is. They think it's just happyology. Like, you just like smiling and happy and laughing all the time. That is important. Positive emotions, it's 1/5. One of the 5 things that lead to happiness and well-being. So that's where you hear a lot of people talk about, a practice of gratitude, right? All that stuff. So there's an acronym PERMA. P is positive emotion. E stands for engagement. That comes from Csikszentmihalyi's research on flow. You heard of getting in the flow?
Yeah.
Like finding something that you love to do, and right? So flow is the second element. The third element is R, relationships. And relationships are absolutely key. In fact, I think there's more evidence. Research on relationships. So that's kind of an obvious one. The M is meaning.
Mm.
right? The whole reason I chose to go down the Marine Corps route is I wanted to do something that mattered, something
Yeah.
that's meaningful intrinsically to me. And then the last one is A. It is accomplishment.
Mm.
Accomplishing things that are really meaningful if you put those two things together. So those are the 5 different things that contribute to happiness and well-being. And so then when I went through the program and learned about all this, there's a lot on the PERM, but
Mm-hmm.
the A doesn't get a lot of love, right? And so
Yeah.
I did a deep dive into that factor and how do people accomplish things and how does that contribute to well-being? And that's how I landed on bravery.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's fascinating. And the positive emotion one, I just want to touch on
Yeah.
that really quickly because there is a lot of, I think, counterfeit version of that, of sort
Mhm.
of the, what do they call it? Toxic positivity of like,
Yeah.
oh no, everything's good, everything's good. And there's sort of a denial of
Yeah.
like what I'm actually
Mhm.
feeling. So would you mind just touching on that one real quick? Because it's one that comes up
Yeah.
a lot, I feel like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm someone who studied positive psychology that specialized in bravery and being the former Marine. Like, I'm not the one just to be like, butterflies and
Right.
rainbows and
Yeah.
unicorns. Like, no.
Right.
So this comes from Barbara Fredrickson's research. And she wrote a book called Positivity. It's absolutely amazing. Everyone should read it. But what she teaches is that instead of thinking that we're a victim of our emotions,
Mhm.
right? Emotions happen to us and we need
Right.
to notice them because they tell us it's information.
Yeah.
It's good information. But we can generate the emotions that best serve us, our families, our community, our work. So we have the power to generate
Mm-hmm.
emotions. At the same time, as your question asked about like toxic positivity, I'll cite Marty Seligman's work on learned optimism,
Mm.
right? So being optimistic doesn't mean that we're putting our head in the sand and pretending like things are not wrong. So it's recognizing what is the obstacle, what is the challenge, what's the current situation that we're in. And the optimism that you can generate is I'm optimistic that myself or my team or my family, we can overcome this. So it's the realism, this really sucks. This is a really bad thing that happened. But we can get through that. So you see the balance of like we're not just pretending like nothing bad happened.
Mm-hmm.
That would not serve anyone well to pretend like, some things
Yeah.
didn't happen.
It's
So
more of a denial,
it's
right?
the
Or-
realism and then the optimism
Mhm.
that you can overcome. Because if something happens and people are pessimistic and they're thinking like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling,
Mhm.
it's all my fault, there's nothing I can ever do about it, that pessimistic mindset, that causes people to just take no action.
Right.
So developing the optimism
Mhm.
is what's needed to take action, to take steps. So if someone's like, we can overcome this, and they're going to like, well, what can we do? And then they start taking action.
Yeah, I love that. So something that comes up a lot in these conversations that I've been having is it's not so much the event itself, but it's changing our perception of that event, right? It's changing our relationship with
Yes.
even with the what we would call negative emotions. Excuse me. It's not about like trying to suppress those or deny that they exist, but it is about changing our relationship with them. And so we adopt more of a mindset of curiosity rather
Yes.
than of judgment or of just shutting down, and which can lead to complacency or to withdrawal or distraction or whatever that may look like. And so I love hearing it from this perspective of there's an optimism in that as well. So a curiosity and an optimism, sort of a resilience of like, I know I'm going to be able to figure this out or find a way through, or we can find a solution or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay.
I got to double click on that
Please,
for just
yeah,
a moment
go
here
for it.
because, no one wants adversity. No one wants challenges to get in their way.
Right.
But like if we go back to our Stoic, philosophers, thinking of like the obstacle is the way, like, the impediment to the action becomes, the path forward. So many times the challenges that we face, those are our opportunities to rise to our best self and to overcome it. And it's those challenges that we encounter and how we respond to them. That's where we become our best selves. So it's not even overcoming the challenge. It's the journey and who we become on that journey. So, many times when I speak to audiences about this topic, I'll ask people like, what's your most proud accomplishment? of when you've had to overcome something really difficult. And I have everyone think about it, and then they come up with that story and have them share with a partner. And then at least half the people in the room have tears because they're talking about this experience. And then I'll ask them, so if you could do it over again, would you not want to have that experience?
Yeah.
And 9 out of 10, not 10 out of 10, but 9 out of 10 say, I'm so glad I ran into that challenge and that adversity because it made me who I am. So just, like realism, like this happened, but, we have an opportunity to rise up, overcome, and it'll make us stronger.
You got me thinking about one of mine, which
Okay.
just, I think I've shared this story before on this podcast, but there was a time where I had kind of a serious career insecurity moment, and I had a performance review with who was then my boss, and then the person that was going to become my new boss,
Okay.
which to me was this kind of, new start. I get a restart with this new boss. And then we had this meeting all together, and from my perspective, I just felt like I got raked over the coals with current boss, and then it's informing new boss, here's all these challenges and whatever. And I just froze up in that moment. I mean, that wasn't my shining moment of like resilience, and I was brave, and I stood up for myself. I actually just kind of shrunk in that situation. But I went home and I talked to my wife about it and was just like, I don't know if I'm going to have this job for much longer. We were living in the Bay Area, expensive place to live. We had 4 kids at the time and a 5th on the way. And so I was just kind of freaking out. And she had this beautiful moment where she let me express all of my concerns and fears and worries and just listened. And at the end of it, she said, "Can I say something now?" And I was like, "Yes, of course." And she said, "Mike, I think this is a really good thing because this is going to help you figure out what you really want."
Yeah.
Because I had been struggling with that relationship, that particular boss, for months leading up to this. And it flipped the whole perspective of that experience. Instead of thinking, I got to find the new job this weekend, I'm going to look for new jobs, I'm going to be kind of depressed about it, whatever, right? It flipped into, what do we really want? What is our life all about? We just started asking the deeper questions again. We do this repeatedly through life.
Curiosity, right?
Yeah, it became curiosity. It became possibility. And it was, there was an optimism in that, which I love that that's what you talked about earlier, because I'm seeing that was so much a part of that experience. And I thankfully had my wife who invited that in and brought that up and out in me. And then we had this incredible exploration weekend of what is life all about? What do we care about most? What does our future look like? We did some writing about the future, and this wasn't even
before that was even a thing to do.
This manifesting thing, right? I was like, we just did manifesting. And what came from that was a lot of really important work around our core values, our purpose, and things ended up working out fine with my job, by the way. But we had this beautiful kind of I don't know, what rose from the ashes of that experience, right, was this beautiful thing that led us on a path that we are actually currently on. I mean, that really was trajectory changing. And so I appreciate that, what you just shared, and how I could immediately see an application in one of our own life stories, life experiences.
Totally.
Okay, so you kind of double clicked into bravery. This idea of, it was accomplishment, right? Was the A?
The accomplishment.
And what is required to have that sense of accomplishment? And I see the connection here where you're talking about if there's too much ease and comfort, there's not much of a sense of accomplishment in that, right? And so tell us a little bit about, what does it look like to face the things that maybe we resist, or maybe that feel too hard, or that feel scary, and how do you go from, because maybe we are in a place of in my comfort zone right now.
Right.
What are the steps to get to a place of and how do we summon that additional bravery or courage to do so?
Yeah. So I did a deep dive in all the research on bravery and what does the science tell us? Because I'm kind of a geek that way. I could just tell you, here's what I think, right? But really, when you look at the research, it's the fear that holds us back from taking action toward what we really want. And so within accomplishment, this is about, what are the things that you want? It could be professionally, it could be personally, it could be for your family, but what do you really want?
Yeah.
And we all have those desires, but sometimes the path to get those things is scary and fear holds us back. So you're kind of in this comfort zone. Like life is, life is good. Life is fine. My job is fine. This is fine. This is fine. I'd really like to do something different and to have this better life, but it's scary and there's risk and there's fear.
Yeah.
So bravery is really defined as not being fearless, because that's, I think, a misnomer too. Like, oh, bravery is like, someone just doesn't have any fear. They're just fearless and they just take action. I'm like, actually, then if they don't have any fear, then they're not being brave, because being brave is taking those courageous steps in the presence of fear.
Yes.
Right? So I think the first step is making sure people realize that one of the ways you can become happier and have a higher sense of well-being is to get uncomfortable. So just telling people that story so they understand that, so that's kind of like the first step.
Yeah.
And then, from there, what my research shares, which will be in my book as well, is there's 3 dimensions to developing bravery. And bravery is a skill that anyone can build. It's like a muscle. Like if someone goes into the gym and they don't have any muscles, they don't go into the gym and then have one moment and they lift something and then they're like they're Hercules, right? No, that is not what happens. You got to do little by little. So that's another thing, is bravery is a skill that you need to work on over time. And the more that you get out of your comfort zone and do things that are just out of your comfort zone, then you start building that muscle. And literally it's the brain that changes. Our brains are plastic and we see changes in the brain when people do that. So it's pretty amazing. So the 3 dimensions are, first of all, we have to work on mindset, of course, right? Like we need to shift people from a pessimistic, like I can't do anything, I'm never going to amount to anything, I'm not even going to try, to seeing the possibility. And there's 4 different evidence-based strategies that I teach my clients, my audiences, to get that genuine belief that I can do hard things. It will not be easy, but I can do things. And then the second part is getting into the science behind taking brave action. There are some people that get stuck in what I call the dreamer zone. I sit and I manifest and they don't really understand what manifesting is, or they have vision boards and they have goals and they love to tell everyone about their dreams and their goals and everything they want to do. But where they struggle is they just can't take that first step, right? So I love the mindset, but we need to teach people how to take action, right? And so we've got some strategies to teach there. And then finally, I've got the third element is all about people and relationships. I call it brave relationships, but it's about having people support your journey and helping you along the way. If you really want to do something hard, you're going to need help. You're going to need someone to lean on. You're going to need someone to say, hey, can you give me some advice? Or this is really harder than I thought, and I need someone to give me a little pep talk. So if you've got those 3 things, if you work on your mindset, you have your strategies to take brave action, and you've got people that are going to support you in the journey, right? Like surround yourself with people that will call forth your best and challenge you to be your best, right? So if you have it's the 3 things together that really can accelerate, someone's ability to be brave and benefit from that A in PERMA.
I love that. Kay, that last one was so interesting to me because I think there's sometimes maybe a misconception that bravery looks like you kind of go and do it alone. Right? Like that's kind of like maybe a false visual that maybe we see in media or culturally or whatever. Like it's kind of this like, you have to be brave and courageous and do it alone.
Yeah.
And
bravado. I can do it all by myself.
Like I got this, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I love that there's a humility in the acknowledgement of, yes, I'm going to be brave and courageous and not alone at the same time.
Yes.
Right. And to me, that's such a cool
Yeah, and we go back to that R in PERMA, relationships. You must have relationships for your own happiness and well-being, but you need it to be able to, if you use the analogy of climbing a mountain, it's such an overused one, but if the thing that I want is climbing that mountain, right? There's going to be times that you're stuck or you don't know how to get over that face or get around it. So you're going to need to ask someone that has already gone and climbed the mountain of like, hey, can you give me some tips?
Yeah.
And that is what I teach in this 3rd dimension is it's vulnerability. And it's all the literature on social support for all the nerds out there. I think everything on social support. So it's recognizing that I don't know how to get over this stream or through this part of the path. I have to be brave enough to ask for help.
Yeah.
So on the bravery side too, is a lot of times when you set a goal, you can look up to people who have gone down that path before you. And sometimes people are intimidated, go like, well, they wouldn't want to talk to me. Like, I don't want to ask for help. So bravery and just going up and introducing yourself to people who have accomplished what you want to accomplish and say, I really admire your work. I'm inspired. I want to do something similar. Can you give me some advice? So it's approaching the people and then admitting, like, I'm stuck. I don't have the answers, right? And or even asking for feedback. Like, some people are like, if I get feedback, it means I'm not doing a good job.
Right.
So we teach them to go to people who have the competence or the experience, the wisdom, and that you trust, and go and ask them this question. This takes bravery. What are a couple suggestions on what I can do better to accomplish my goal?
Yeah.
And then you have to listen to it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, there's like that bravery shows up in so many levels of this overall process, right? The courage to ask for help, that has been a big emphasis in our community. One of our, we have what we call the Here Brotherhood Oath, and one of the lines in there is that I will reach out and ask for help. Like when I'm struggling, I will reach out. And so it's this commitment to, it's almost like a pre-commitment to be brave enough to talk, to connect with people, especially in those times when we are feeling like we're struggling, we're alone, we're maybe even spiraling. And to, that line has resonated with so many people. Even we did a recording of people reading through the oath just to get different clips of people saying the different phrases. And that one, I think maybe more than any other, was the one that would kind of stir up some emotion in these men, because it's not one that we're typically encouraged or taught to do. Like we often get the opposite message of, you just got to suck it up.
Suck it up.
Yeah. Like, and so
a real man doesn't have to ask for help.
Right,
so
right.
we need to correct that.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Real men can be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And express emotion. Yeah.
And ask for help.
And women love that. So men out there, you want to impress women, like just show a little bit of that vulnerable side and emotion, and it's unique.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I do want to dig into the first one that you said. There were the three components. Remind me what the first one.
It's brave mindset, brave actions,
mindset.
and brave relationships. Yeah.
So the mindset was just about changing those sort of fundamental beliefs and we all have these kind of core beliefs that we've developed, maybe even through childhood, right? Like these are kind of early programmed things that we just believe about ourselves and about the world. How do you go about helping people transform from a mindset of I just can't do this, or things just don't work out for me, or whatever it may sound like?
Can't do this. Yeah. Well, so we have to look at, again, the research, right?
Yeah.
And what doesn't work is just go do it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, let me motivate you. Like, man up, just be brave and go do it. That doesn't work, right? And so that's where a lot of, I think, motivational speakers that have wonderful stories about how they've overcome things, and you leave pumped up, but then people go home and they don't take any action. So I'm so glad you asked this. So what works that has been tested in empirical studies in psychology? That's what I care about. So the first one is Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset and the power of the word yet. Because you just said, like, I just can't do it. So the first thing we introduce people to is the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. So a fixed mindset believes that I am born with certain skills and abilities and I can't change it. There's nothing I can do. And then the growth mindset is that with hard work and effort, I can grow my skills and abilities. So if someone says, I just can't do that, we would say, can you add one word? One word. So we teach them the power of yet. I just can't do that.
Yet.
And it's a really powerful word.
Yeah.
Because then, like, so what is different about when you say yet? It means that it's possible, right? So there's four things that we teach there, but we start off with growth mindset, right? It just opens a little door of possibility. Then we go into the stress is enhancing mindset. So that I don't know if you're familiar with that, but like Kelly McGonigal, Aaliyah Crum, both psychologists, have talked about how people's relationship with challenges and stress, if they think stress and challenges are bad, then it will be bad for them.
Right.
Psychologically and
Physically. Yeah.
physiologically,
Yeah. That's
right? But if
amazing.
you have a mindset that stress and challenges, and again, if you tie this to growth mindset, like it's going to be really hard. Like I just could never run a marathon yet, right? It is not going to be easy. There's going to be pain. There's going to be blisters. There's going to be sore muscles. But that hard work and effort that will not be easy, right? That will yield something great. So if you look at stress and challenges as something that makes us stronger and better, then we have a positive psychological response and we have a positive physiological response. So it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Can I tell you about one story that blew
Please.
me away?
Yeah.
Because I mainly work with organizations, right? So I go into companies. And so Aliyah Crum and other researchers did a study where they went into a really, really stressful company, UBS. So finance company, like there's nothing more stressful I've heard than if you work in finance, right? And they took, I believe the number of people was 400 different leaders in this company. And the only intervention they did, they wanted to test, could they shift people's mindset on stress? So they just showed a 3-minute video, took half of the people, that was their control, and they watched a video that basically said stress is something that makes you stronger. It's your body's response preparing you to perform at your best. It was basically 3 minutes saying like stress and challenges are good for you. And then the other half, because we had to have a placebo group, they heard the message that we usually see on the news and we see everywhere, which is stress is horrible, avoid stress, it's going to kill you and all that. And then they followed those people over time, and there was a statistical significance in performance on the job from watching a 3-minute video. And I can't remember, I think they watched it a couple times a week for like a number of weeks. A 3-minute video and saying that you're in a stressful job and stress is enhancing caused a statistical significance in performance and job satisfaction. And they looked at the physiological response of blood pressure and I think blood sugar. I mean, fascinating. So that's where I'm on a mission to spread the truth about like if you have the right belief around stress, right, you can have a healthier response to it. And life is not like there's always going to be stress. There's always going to be adversity. So let's at least try to be better at stress. And then the other two, and I won't get into them, but so we do growth mindset. The stress is enhancing mindset. The third thing we talk about is generating positive emotions that we talked about.
Yeah.
You know, gratitude is one of many, many different things that we can do. So teaching people that you have an ability to generate emotions that will best serve you and your team. And we teach them how to do that.
Cool.
And then they're just like, wow, like I can just decide to have a great day. And I'm like, yes, you can. And we teach them how to do it. And the last thing is then we get kind of deep into the voice in our head and the thoughts that we have. And we get into that. And we teach people that instead of listening to the thoughts and believing them, that we can take control and we can start talking to ourselves. And so that goes a little bit deeper, but I really cite Ethan Kross's work, absolutely brilliant psychologist who wrote a book called Chatter that really moved me. So that's a lot, but you know,
such good stuff.
Yeah. So I kind of start with just the simple one, like yet, right? And then we can go deeper, you know, to help people with all those things. And if the voices in your head are not helping you, right? If you're telling your things, horrible things that are making it harder for you, then we need to stop that. And we can. It's not easy, but we can definitely do that.
Well, I feel like in my experience with meditation, mindfulness, that's one of the big objectives is to kind of separate yourself from those voices, from those thoughts, and realize that those voices are not you. And that fundamentally alone was such an impactful insight, right?
Yes.
And the thoughts can just be like these clouds in the sky as they pass by, and you can observe that they're there and you can see them and acknowledge. So it's not about suppress and pretend they're not there and deny and run from it and or be afraid that they're there. It's just like let it.
They're there
float
and
by.
be curious.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Like I keep having this thought. Must be like important, and then you just like let it go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if I like to joke, like I was the person that said like anything like that was meditation, mindfulness, breathing, I would roll my eyes and go, this is such fluffy stuff, right?
Right.
And I've tried a lot of different things. And what I want to encourage everyone to do is, you know, keep trying. It's worth it. I have a friend who is a fellow Marine, and he went through this crazy journey. His name's Matt Tenney. And he finally taught me a method where it finally clicked. So if I can learn to be mindful than anyone can. Because I was like the one where I'm a lost cause. I was like at UPenn studying and learning from the most well-educated and experienced people ever on this, and it didn't work. But it was a fellow Marine, because it was like he figured out a way to do it. He actually learned the way monks did it, but like, I don't know, it finally clicked. So if there's hope for me, anyone can learn how to do this.
That's awesome. And interestingly, that's its own kind of, doing a hard thing. Like sitting in stillness with yourself is not an easy thing, but it doesn't appear to be a hard thing, right?
Yeah.
You're just sitting there like, what's so hard about that? But then you actually do it and you start to feel some of the discomfort of that experience initially. And then there's such a process in that. So I see the courage in even those kinds of practices, which connects to, of course, everything you're sharing around
and
bravery.
It's not soft. It's not weak. It's not fluffy. It's like, it's mastering your mind.
Yeah.
Like, whoa.
Yeah.
Like once you realize you can do that, like back to like, you can take ownership of the trajectory of your life, and it starts with your mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask you to share maybe a story or an experience in which you had to be brave?
I'm thinking right now.
Okay.
I had started my company doing leadership development, and I was really lucky. It was somewhat of an easy transition because I was doing it in corporate America. And then when I transitioned out, my old company hired me so starting my business, that wasn't the scariest move. But, after I've had my business for like 9 years, I realized I was comfortable. I love the work that I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do great work. I have wonderful clients. I create breakthroughs for leaders and help drive results. I loved it. But I just decided, I'm like, I need to get uncomfortable. I need to push myself. I need to challenge myself. And so that caused me to apply to go back to school. I haven't been in school forever. So this whole journey took me down going to UPenn to study positive psychology as I was running a business, 2 kids still at home, one a senior. I was the president of a local, not-for-profit, that year, I had so many things going on, but I'm just I decided to do it 30 hours a week. It was, I don't know how I did it. But as a result of going through that process, what I'm doing right now, I'm writing a book. That's scary.
Yeah.
What if no one buys it? Right. I'm on podcasts like this. I'm now getting on really big stages.
Yeah.
Right. Where, I've keynoted at a company, but I was doing more leadership development workshops.
Sure.
So I tell you, it's kind of scary what I'm doing right now, but you go back to it's the meaning. I really feel so passionate about the message. So even though it's scary, and I'm sure I'm going to make some mistakes along the way, I feel like I'm living my model, right? You got to get out of your comfort zone, do things that scare you, take that action. So I'm living it right now.
That's awesome. Oh, I love that. So this just
How about
reminds
you?
me, my wife wrote, some of our kids have sort of a condition around eating, and it's kind of a daily struggle. Just it's old school, they would just call it being really picky, but there actually is a diagnosis. It's called ARFID, avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, and it's more like a phobia than just a preferential thing.
Right.
And so there are legitimate phobia types of behaviors and responses around certain kinds of foods and textures and things like that. And just something that is relatively new to the diagnosis world.
Yeah.
It hasn't been around for very many years, but it's been so fascinating to discover this and then to know how to work with our kids in this respect. And she found that the more that she shared and talked about it, so many people have reached out to her, and this has been something that's been relevant for them too, or for their niece or nephew or whatever it is. And so she felt called to write a book about it, a children's book, which was a first time for her.
And there's probably not a book out there like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not all about the science of it. It's more about what are some of the affirmations and the just encouragement and the validation of this kind of unique new thing, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's been around a long time. It just hasn't had a name before, right?
Did she write it for parents, or is it?
Yeah.
It's for kids?
Well, it's for both.
It's for both.
Yeah, it's for parents and children. And the title of it though is Brave Every Day. because
No way.
that's the kind of
Okay, I love your wife.
mentality that
Because
it
already
takes,
because
right?
after you had that thing at work, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm like, I love
Oh
your
yeah.
wife. Like, I
No,
need to meet her.
she's
So,
amazing. Yeah, she really is. So that just came to mind when you were sharing your story, and this idea of like you're living in courage every day, and
mhm,
then the title of her book came to mind, Brave Every Day.
mhm.
What a cool mantra. Like
What a cool mantra.
yeah, I love
Yeah.
it. Well, is
Yeah.
there anything else that you feel like we need to cover on this topic? I know we've covered a lot of amazing ground of like all these steps and the science and the psychology of happiness and bravery and
Yeah.
overcome, like figuring out our wants and our desires, which leads to how do we then take courage? What else do you think we
I think we
need to
covered
cover?
most of it.
Okay,
But I think to maybe end where we began, which
sure.
is if people want their best life, it's right there. They they can start moving in that direction to live a better life, and it starts with bravery. It's just realizing that it's a choice.
Mm,
It's a choice to stay comfortable. And I think what my message is really for a lot of people that feel like their life is okay.
mm, yeah.
That's really what positive psychology is too.
Mm,
Like, what is positive psychology? Like, it's that you've got this entire spectrum of people and their well being and their mental health, their well being in general. And psychology has always really focused on people who are if you've got a spectrum of people who are the happiest people, which are a +10, and then the people who are the least happy, a -10. So people who are not happy and that are maybe anxious or schizophrenic or anything below 0, the field of psychology has usually been focused on helping people who are sick and to try to get them to not be miserable anymore.
mm,
So really what my area of focus is taking people who aren't unhappy, people that might be like my life is fine.
yeah.
Like my life is fine. And they're thinking like there's nothing wrong with it. This is just what life is. It's just going to be fine and it may not be inspiring. But positive psychology is about helping people who are at 0 to get to 5, or people who are at 2 or 3 or 5 get up to 7, 8, 9 or to 10. So it's about helping people like create the best life,
Mm,
right? And you can't live that best life unless you're trying to tap into all 5 of the PERMA. And one of them we absolutely know is like, what do you really want? And take steps toward, and it's going to be scary. And everyone has the fears, but don't just stay in the comfort zone. And I say that, part of me as a Marine, like just go do it, embrace the suck, right? But
yeah.
but it's to help people realize that I just want people to have the happiest life, and I want them to realize that staying in the comfort zone and staying fine is not going to bring you extraordinary levels of happiness and well-being. So be brave, and hopefully they learned a couple things. And my book isn't
Absolutely.
coming out until July. Like, do you realize how difficult it is to publish a book? Like, the manuscript is done, but I'm trusting the publishers. Like, there's so many different steps.
Yeah.
So it won't be coming out until July, but when
Okay.
it does, it's written as a parable. So
Oh,
it's
cool.
easy for anyone to learn
Cool.
and to relate. And part of the reason I wrote it as a parable is when I pick up a parable, like a business parable, I always have to get to the end because I want to know what happens. But
Yeah.
sometimes I pick up a business book and I get through the first half and then I set it down.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah.
It's the power of storytelling, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
one last thing I got to ask you is if somebody's been listening to this and they're feeling like, yes, I want to step into this, what would you say is maybe just the first step? And this you referred to, I think it was the 3 parts where it was like the application, right?
Yeah.
Like we have to go and take action.
Mhm.
Like what are some examples or just a way, what's a way that they can step into actually applying and taking action, like a practical
Yeah. And
step?
so, like on my website, I've got all these free tools. So it kind
Oh,
of tells
cool.
them how to do it. So if they go to my
Okay.
website and you put it in the show notes, like I have all these
Perfect.
free tools. So, and what I have on my website too is people do a bravery assessment and they
Mm,
figure out where they kind of need help and they can go and find the tool. But what comes to mind is I think sometimes people wait until they're ready or they
mm,
feel confident or they wait until they don't have the fear. And that is the biggest misnomer where I tell people just do it. I mean, I guess I'm saying a Nike phrase, but and here's just a little tiny example. Like my older daughter, goes off to college and all these new experiences. And one of the things she was just really scared about is we're telling her like she's got to take an Uber from like the airport to her like dorm room
Mhm.
because she didn't have anyone to like pick her up. But I mean, just think of like how scary that is as
Yeah.
a young teenage
First
girl,
time.
right? Like,
Mhm.
like she's 19 or 18 at the time. it's one of those things where I'm like, you can't wait until you're ready. Just like do it. And so like this happened maybe like 6 months ago, but she just got there and I'm like, just, you can call me, you can text me, but she just ordered it. And then she got in there and she goes, Mom, that wasn't so bad. Right. So like just that little example, like I just want everyone to know, like, just don't wait until the fear goes away or that you're ready. Just take action. Because once you take the action and you do it, then your self-confidence goes up and you're like, wow, I did that. Wow. And then you feel more positive and optimistic. So all three of those dimensions of bravery are interconnected.
Yeah.
So one is maybe use the word yet, or just take the action, or find some person that's done it before and go say, how'd you do it?
I love it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I've loved our conversation. So people can find you. You said you have a website with this assessment tool. We'll for sure put that in the notes. Anywhere else people should be looking for you?
I'm all over social media.
Okay.
You can't escape me. So like any social media platform, you just put in my name, Jill Schulman, and or Science of Bravery or anything like that, and they'll find me. And and I think that's one last thing I want to end with is just for all of us, like, listen to podcasts like this. Like we end up bathing ourselves in different ideas, and like we are what we attend to. So keep listening to podcasts like this or positive things. Like if you're going to be using social media, make sure that you're liking and following people like you and my podcast. So just continue to surround yourself with people and ideas, and that's another practical thing you can do. I do it every day. Like I read Stoic philosophy every morning. I listen to now your podcast and all. And doesn't it give you a little bit of a lift?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so.
We talk so much about like diet and nutrition. This is the diet and nutrition of our minds, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I had a blast.
Awesome. Thank you.